It's Friday the 13th, September 2024, and I just got finished running the last of those boards through the jointer. I was hoping to get them finished on Wednesday because I knew the weather was going to change. We had good weather on Wednesday and didn't get them finished. Didn't get as early a start on them as I'd like to. I had to fly Wednesday, which was fine, but we didn't get off when we expected to because it was foggy in town until late in the morning. The only place in southeast Alaska it was foggy. And then my boss wanted to walk one of the streams to count the fish in it on by foot, which was fine because I'm the one that suggested that to her. We fly the streams and we count them from the air, but you can't get near as accurate a count as you can on the ground, and this stream is one that's kind of critical. But I came home and I got a start on edging those, or edge some more of those boards, and then I just run out of daylight and energy about the same time. So I've got this jointer, 8-inch jointer, got a 75-inch table on it. I'd had one that I bought before, and I had it for about a year, and then they came out with this one with a longer table on it, and so I sold the other one and bought this one. And I wished I had one with about a 8-foot table on it instead of a 6-foot table. And last year I took the knife head out of it and put a Schilix spiral head cutter in it. And one of the reasons I did that, because a lot of the work that I do here is finish work. The boards that I mill down and machine down, I want to finish on them. And a lot of them have a lot of knots and contrary grain in them. So that spiral head cutter doesn't leave the tear out and stuff where you have grain changes as a regular cutter head does. Now a regular cutter head works pretty good as long as it's sharp, but this one was due to be sharpened again. I've sharpened it once before, and after I sharpened it, it works pretty good, but still not as good as these Schilix ones, spiral head cutters. So they're quieter when they're running, they don't make as much noise, and they don't have as much tear out on them. But for what I was doing here, they're the wrong head in there. I should have put the other head back in there, sharpened the blades up and put the other head back in there, because they're not good for hogging off material. You can't make near as much as deep of a cut with those things as you can with the regular knives on there. It bogs down the motor. It takes a lot more power to turn it and to run it in the wood. So I had a lot of material to take off of some of these boards, and I was bogging that thing down. Well, Wednesday it just finally had enough and said that was it, overheated, and it shut down. But that was fine because I was about done for the day physically myself anyway. So I just come out here and did the last 30 some of them, just finished those up. And I changed my depth of cut so it wasn't quite so deep, but that meant I had to run some of those boards through there 4 or 5 times instead of twice. So anyway, that was done. It's been raining, pouring down rain here the last couple of days. Yesterday was Thursday and it poured down rain and I didn't get anything done out here. This morning it was pouring down rain most of the morning, and it finally let up a little bit here this afternoon, and it's been sprinkling on and off, but mostly it's been okay. So I got out here and finished this up. So now those are all planed on 2 sides and edged on 1 side, and now I gotta move my jointer out of the way and set up my radial arm saw, and what I'll do is trim those up to the finished size that I want. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that today or not. It might be a couple of days before I get to that, so I'm going to have to cover those back up again so they don't get all wet. Alright, so far I've got 4 beautiful nominal dimension 2x4s, or 2x6s I mean. Well, I've got some more of these that'll make those, and I'll keep working on them. Any of them that won't, I'm going to set aside and rip down for something else. I had to adjust that roller, because if the roller's canted a little bit, if it's not perfectly level with the table on the saw, then it's going to want to walk those boards out one way or the other, and it was kind of walking them away from the blade on that far end when it comes through this way. It looks like it's pretty good now. I wished I had a longer table. I wished I had the table I used to have set up for ripping that I had years ago with the 10-inch saw. I had an 8 or 10 foot in-feed and out-foot table on that, so I could rip pretty long boards on that. Now I've got a set short regular table on the radial arm saw, so I've got my roller horses out here set up to hold up the end of it. And even so, I've got this out so it kind of holds the end of it up, but once I get the board all the way through the saw, it's still cantilevered out this way too far, so I've got to come out on this side of the roller to finish pulling the board through. But it's working. I'm getting pretty good results out of that. I'm happy with that. I'll just keep working on it like this and work through that pile and see how many I get before it gets too dark to work anymore. Well, I got 28 pretty nice 2x6s all edged there now in that pile. I got to looking at a plan for trusses for the addition on the house, and I need 7 trusses. Well, that calls for 14 2x6s for the rafters. And then I got to thinking, I forgot that I've got stuff made for putting a timber frame porch on the house there, and I've got all the yellow cedar cut for that, but I still need boards for the trusses for that, for the extra length on it. It's going to be 16 feet, and so I'm going to have some trusses going out off of the A-frame from the entryway to the porch, and I want pretty nice 2x6s for that. Anyway, that's 28 of them, and that's enough for one day. That is a pretty rough haul on that radial arm saw, even though that one is handling it pretty well. The old 10-inch one would have been crapped out by now for sure. That one is starting to bog a little bit once in a while, so it's getting hot. It's 16-foot runs on that, on 1.5 inch thick or whatever it is, so it gets a little bit of a break between 2x6s, but not much. It only probably takes me less than a minute to stack up the one when I'm finished cutting and grab the next one to stick it on there. So I've got about 60 or 70 of them left to go, and not all of those are going to make 2x6s. A bunch of those are going to be cut down into 2x4s or some other dimension. But there's still some of them going to be 2x6s, and they're pretty nice 2x6s, the ones that I've cut so far. But I've got to have some nice ones for a load-bearing wall on one end of the addition, and then the filler pieces inside the SIP panels, which can be crappier wood. Anyway, that's enough for today. I'm going to go ahead and cover this stuff up. It's supposed to start pouring down rain tonight and rain for the next few days. We'll see what happens. It doesn't look too bad now. It looked like it was going to rain a little bit ago, but it's starting to clear off now, but it don't take very long to change.
You want me to walk the dogs, but you keep on doing it?
It rained pretty hard over the weekend, so it didn't get much done. Didn't get anything done out here. It was supposed to be raining today, but it's been pretty nice so far. It sprinkled a little bit, and I thought it was going to rain some more, but it's been pretty nice, so I got everything out and have been edging up some more of these boards. Well, so far I've got 62 of those 16-foot 2x6s edged, and they look pretty good. Now there's 2 of those out of those that aren't full 16 feet anymore. They've got those big knots going across them, and they broke at those knots. And then there's a couple more of them in there that are going to have to be trimmed up around some big knots. But all in all, those are all some really nice looking 2x6s. I've got 8 more or 9 more of those 16-footers to do, but they're ones that are pretty crappy. I don't know whether I'm going to rip those down into 2x4s or leave them as 2x6s to use for filler in those SIP panels, or what I'm going to do with them just yet. I got one that I screwed up on here, and I put the wrong side of it through the blade on the mill, on the radial arm saw, and actually put the plain side in there. I didn't look close enough at it when I was doing it, and so the rough side is out. So that one is going to have to be trimmed down probably into 2x4. I still got all the shorter ones, the 15-foot 2x6s to do, and there's some of those that are going to be pretty nice, but a lot of those are kind of crappy with a lot of the shake in it, a lot of checks and stuff in it, and some rot on the end. Anyway, I got one big pile, one really nice pile, like I said, 62. well, 60 if I don't count the 2 that are broken. And those will all make rafters. The saw was starting to overheat and bog down a little bit. I've run a lot of cuts through there, a lot of linear feet through there between edging these 2x6s that I got that are 16 and then cutting all those stickers. So I've got a regular rip blade that's new. The one I've got is kind of a combination blade or an edger blade. It makes a really fine cut. I'll change over to that rip blade. That's got a lot more aggressive teeth on it, a lot more aggressive cut. It won't make quite as nice edge on it, but you can see here on these last boards I did, maybe the burn marks on it as it was starting to go through there and feed through there. Well, I could sharpen it, but I don't want to take the time to get my sharpener out and sharpen that blade, so I'll just change it over to the regular rip blade. This is the blade that I've been using. It's a Freud Diablo 12-inch general purpose for miter and slide miter saws, 44 teeth. Anyway, it makes a pretty smooth cut, and it worked okay. It worked pretty good for what I was doing. This is what I'm going to change over to here. This is a regular rip blade here, thick stock rip blade. It's a Freud, but it makes a wider kerf. It's a 11/64 kerf, it says on there. And it says for glue line joints on thick stock. And it had a 1-inch arbor on them. Both of these had a 1-inch arbor on them. I had to get a shim in there to put it on this radial arm saw. Anyway, I'll switch this over, get this on there, and let that motor cool off. It's pretty warm, so it'll give me a chance to cool off a little bit too. But that one should rip right through it. The other blade that I have is this one here. This one came with the saw when I got it, and it's just a plywood blade. We don't want to use that. There's too many teeth on that. That one wouldn't cut very good on a rip. Well, I guess I'm done for the day. I got all those 16-footers trimmed up, and I got 19 of the 15-footers trimmed up. Actually, I got all of them run through the machine once. Problem was that there was 13 of them that were too narrow, and they just went right by the saw. There was a few of them that took a little bit of the edge off of them, but they had a bad blade on the mill when I cut that cant out, and they were wavy like a bad road or like a washboard. So I was going to cut those down to 2x4s. I just set the saw up to rip them down to 3.5 inches wide, and was just getting it set up, and the saw said nope, that's enough for one day. A thermal cutout on it cut out, so I stopped for a while and let it rest for a while there before I started that. But apparently it was pretty warm. So it did a lot of work today, cutting a lot of board. That 10-inch radial arm saw never would have got near done what I did today with this saw. So it's not an industrial saw, it's just a consumer saw, so it did yeoman's work today. So anyway, I'm done for the day. Let that saw cool down, and then I can put those other boards through there, rip them down into 2x4s. Get these covered up for the night. We'll see how the weather is tomorrow, whether I can work on this some more or not. A little slow getting started today. It's another nice day. It's supposed to start raining again for the next week. I'm going to take advantage of this while I can. I got most of that bunch of lumber all sawed up yesterday, finished edging and stuff. And I had some last boards there that I wouldn't make 2x6s, but they'll make 2x4s. I was just starting to set up the radial arm saw for ripping those down into 2x4s last night when I had to quit. I set one of those up on the radial arm saw and I was readjusting the guard and everything for it. So started to make my cut and the guard wasn't quite adjusted right, so I shut it down, readjusted everything, and then when I went to start it up, it wouldn't start. I knew the thing was getting tired because it was starting to bog down. Even though I put a brand new sharp blade on there, it was still bogging down a little bit, and that's a good sign that the motor's getting warm. I just shut it down, stacked up all the wood and everything, covered it all up and put everything away for the night. Figuring I'd come back out this morning and push that thermal reset switch on there and get right back to work. Well, I pushed that several times and nothing happened, so then I started into the troubleshooting mode. I took a multimeter and went all the way back to the panel and started from the circuit breakers out, checking everything until I got to the motor, and everything was good out to the motor. So I pulled the cover off for the switch, wondering if the switch was bad, and that was good. So then I pulled the cover off where the thermal breaker is, and the capacitors and stuff are inside there. Capacitors tested out okay, but the thermal overload switch was open and it wouldn't close. Then I got to start doing some investigation on it. One of the main power leads goes into the thermal overload switch, goes through it and then back into the starter stuff on the motor. And then there's a third wire that comes into that thermal overload switch that I didn't know what it was. So anyway, I was checking it out. I went in online and was looking to see if I could get a new thermal overload switch, if I could find one, and getting a little research on it, trying to figure out what that third wire was, because I figured if I just hooked those two hot leads together, the thing was going to work. It would just bypass the thermal overload switch. But I didn't know for sure what that blue wire was for. Oh, anyway, I started doing some investigation online and checking it out. Well, one of the sites that I went through, several guys were having trouble with those switches and trying to get new ones and stuff, and looked and found some part numbers and stuff for new ones. And anyway, as I was researching that, I come across one thread that said that the guys couldn't get it to reset like I did, and then they wound up, because you push the button and it clicks, and they weren't getting it to reset. But then they pushed it really hard and it clicked really loud and then it reset. So I come out and tried that, and sure enough, once I pushed really hard on it and it clicked really hard, then the thermal overload switch is working. So we're back in operation again. I'm just getting started, but my wife just brought me out a sandwich for lunch, so I think I'll stop and take a break and have a little bite to eat, and then we'll get those rest of those boards ripped down into something that's usable. I got those 2x6s or quasi 2x6s ripped down into 2x4s. I almost hated to do that, but they wouldn't make 2x6s. Mistake on that one cant with a bad blade on that sawmill made it wavy, and they wouldn't be wide enough for real 2x6s. So anyway, I got them all ripped down into 2x4s, and they made some nice pretty 2x4s. I'm going to need 2x4s anyway. So anyway, that pile of lumber is done. I've got it all milled up, machined up, and ready to use. So I'm going to go ahead and get the Bobcat and take it up and put it away for now until they get ready to use it. And all the offcuts as it came off of those 2x6s, I got those cut up into 4-inch or 4-foot lengths, so I'm going to rip those down into stickers for those 1/2-inch plywood boards that I've got, and I can get those stickered and get air running through them. But I can do that in the hangar with the hangar closed, and it's supposed to start raining and be nasty again for another week, so I can close that hangar door up and work inside there out of the weather now. With that unit of lumber there where it's at, and even when I had parts of it over here stacked up, I couldn't get that hangar door closed when the weather was bad. Things got a little bit wet. So I got a whole bunch of just thin stuff that came off of those boards when I edged them down with the radial arm saw. Didn't turn it all into sawdust or planer shavings like I did the other 2 sides or the other 3 sides. Now those I can break up into smaller pieces, and it'll make perfect kindling for getting fire started in that stove. So I think the next thing I'm going to do, well, I'll get the Bobcat and the forks on it and get these boards out of here, get them moved over and get them stacked up out of the way. And then I can rip down the rest of those chunks for stickers, and then tomorrow I can go ahead and get that plywood stickered up and get it started to dry out. Alright, that's enough for now.